this is Healthy Relationships, and I'm continuing with the series, Boundaries and Relationships, and this is part 3, and I'm thinking that this would be the last installment in this program, and what I want to do is to look at mindsets for setting healthy boundaries, and then how to set healthy boundaries, but looking at the principles involved, and then some practical examples. So really, really glad to have you join us today. And if you want to see what would have gone before, part 1 and part 2, of course, you can visit FBN TV. This is a YouTube channel, and look for Healthy Relationships. And we're looking at boundaries and relationships. So just to recap a little bit about what a boundary is and different types of boundaries when we're talking about relationships. Just want to go into that a little bit before I get into the mindsets for setting healthy boundaries. If our mind is not changed, it becomes very difficult. And of course, the principles involved in setting healthy boundaries. So a boundary is an imaginary line that separates me from you. It separates your physical space, your feelings, your needs, your responsibilities from others. Your boundaries will tell other people how they should treat you and what is acceptable and what is not. Remember, you are priceless. There's a way that you should be treated, right? According to psychologist and author Henry Cloud, boundaries help us keep the good in and the bad out. A boundary is a property line. And we can easily, this is Henry Cloud speaking here, and we can easily understand this by thinking of one's property, which defines what is yours and what is not yours. So a boundary then simply defines ownership. Knowing the scope of ownership is important because whoever owns something controls it and is thereby responsible for it. In the material world, boundaries are easily defined by such things as walls or fences, but in the immaterial world, such as human relationships, boundaries are harder to see. End of quote. So we understand that boundaries, we have them because we're talking about responsibility and ownership. Boundaries are a reflection of your principles, your values, your rules, and the guidelines that you have set for yourself based on your worldview and beliefs. So for me, I am a follower of Jesus. My worldview is based on the Bible and what the Bible says about human beings and who created them and how we should treat each other. And therefore, my boundaries come from those beliefs, comes from that worldview. So when it comes to relationships, there are different types of boundaries. So I would have looked at 6 types of boundaries, and I said you can go back to an earlier program, the first program, part 1, I would have dealt with the different types of boundaries, and they are physical boundaries, intellectual boundaries, emotional or mental boundaries, sexual boundaries, time boundaries, and material boundaries. Now, as I said in the last program, this is a quote that I love from Black and Ends, 1997. Better boundaries, owning and treasuring your life. And they say, Black and Ends, they say, without personal boundaries, you will act, sleep, work, groan, feel used, and fulfill basic responsibilities rather than make choices to live and love fully, to work hard and nobly, to fulfill your purpose and to contribute passionately to your world. This is what happens when we don't have boundaries, personal boundaries. We sleep in, we act in, go just basically fulfilling basic responsibilities because we're being pulled at from all sides. We're getting involved with persons who we should be setting boundaries with, it, right? Remember, we have limited time, emotional energy, mental energy, financial resources, right? there is a limit to it. And if we want to fulfill our potential and be the best that we can be to the people that God is sending us to and using us to help and empower, we must have personal boundaries. And we understand that from childhood, many of us were taught to bend and change ourselves to make people feel better or to make people feel comfortable. We get a message, whether it's implied or whether it is very clear. How can you do that? So you don't want to do something, but somebody is saying, no, you have to do it because the person will feel uncomfortable, or the person will feel hurt, or the person will feel disrespected if you don't do that. Go and give so-and-so a kiss, and you don't want to do it. They don't want to hug them. But you are told if you don't, you will be seen as being disrespectful or make the person feel hurt or uncomfortable. So that what happens is that we find it very difficult to set appropriate boundaries, even when we become adults, because the message that has been sent to us is that if we don't do what others want, we could offend them or hurt them. And generally, most of us don't like making people feel hurt by our behavior or offending them. And so a lot of times, even to our own hurt, we do not set healthy boundaries. We have been taught from a very early age to put the feelings of others over our own needs and feelings, to the point where some of us can't even answer the question on how to start setting boundaries. Boundaries, what is that? And how do you even set that? And in last week program, I would have explained that boundaries can be set in 3 different ways. So they can be permeable or porous. So these ones, too much, you could just pass in and out of that, right? In and out. They can be semi-permeable or flexible, so they let the good in but keep the bad out. So we could already see that the flexible or the permeable boundaries are what are considered healthy. They let the good in, keep the bad out. And then we have rigid boundaries, which of course keeping everything out. So the unhealthy, of course, would be the porous or the permeable and the rigid boundaries. Also, there are many reasons why people may consistently struggle with unhealthy boundaries, such as a fear of rejection, a lack of experience with certain limitations, where you are people pleaser. So you always want to please people. You don't want anybody to be upset with you. We also have a lot of fears about setting boundaries. So the fear of losing love, you're afraid that, if I set this boundary, this person will leave me, they won't love me anymore, right? A fear of loneliness, even a fear of how the person may react in anger, and you are afraid of the person's anger or the angry reaction, a fear of hurting others, and even a fear of being misunderstood. And we know that one of the things, we cannot live our lives from a place of fear. Living your life from a place of fear is very depressing, right? It is very harmful. So we really want to live our lives from a place of love and a place of faith. And we have to understand that love is an action word. Acts of love don't always feel good, right? An act of love can feel painful, but acts of love lead to wholeness in a person's life, right? And that is the place we have to operate from. If I love this person, I may have to do things that may cause both of us pain, but ultimately it is for my benefit and also the other person's benefit. Yeah. So some of my information for today's program is taken from Self-Help Alliance, Better Boundaries, copyright 2010, and Johnson State College, Vermont, Student Life Counseling Services, Developing Healthy Boundaries, and of course, my own work and experiences. So I want to look at the mindsets for healthy boundaries. And if you're now joining us via radio or YouTube or on Facebook, I am looking at healthy boundaries, relationships and boundaries. And we are looking at today the mindsets that are necessary for healthy boundaries, and also the principles involved in setting healthy boundaries. So how do we set healthy boundaries? So I have 18 mindsets that are necessary for healthy boundaries, and I'm just going to go through them. I'm going to list them. 1, as an adult, I have the power to make choices for myself. 1, as an adult, I have the power to make choices for myself. 2, I am both valuable and imperfect, right? I am valuable and imperfect. I'm not perfect. I am in a lifelong process of growth. I have things I need to work on. I need to change. Yes, I am growing. As we understand, as followers of Jesus, we're growing from glory to glory. We're becoming more like Christ. Let me decrease and let him increase. So I'm in a lifelong process of growth. My individual significance is not lowered or raised by others' opinions of me. God sees me as significant. So whether somebody sees me as significant or not, that does not affect my significance, because God, my creator, sees me as significant. My quality of life is enriched when living in interdependent relationships. Remember, we're not independent. That is a myth. We need each other to be successful, even to fulfill our potential, even to grow, even to change, even to heal. We need one another and God, right? So my quality of life is enriched when living in interdependent relationships with cooperative and respectful people. God, of course, wired me for community. And therefore, on the other side of that, my quality of life is diminished when living in interdependent relationships, because like it or not, we are in interdependent relationships with uncooperative and disrespectful people. Number 7, my intrinsic value, my inherent worth is neither more or less than others. I am priceless, and so is everyone else. This is very important. Number 8, certain types of contributions will be more esteemed than others in society or some circles. But this does not add or diminish the significance of my contribution. And let me read that again, because a lot of times we equate contribution with worth, a person's worth or their value, and a person is priceless. So number 8, this 8 mindset, certain types of contributions will be more esteemed than others in society or in some circles. But this does not add or diminish the significance of my contribution. Number 9, others' talents are a pleasure to observe and applaud. It is so wonderful to be able to appreciate, admire, applaud the talents of others and even the contribution of others. Number 10, I value life and operate from a sense of gratitude, not entitlement. I am grateful for the life God has given me. I am grateful for the things that he has allowed to come into my life. I don't operate like if I'm entitled to this. I am owed this. Remember, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. What we all deserve is death. Sin leads to death. And what we all deserve is death. So we don't come into life. If you have to set healthy boundaries, you cannot operate from a sense of entitlement. I'm entitled to this and I'm entitled to that. No. I value life and operate from a sense of gratitude, not entitlement. Number 11, I am able to face challenges and meet problems by the grace of God. You are a powerful being. God has created you with emotional power, mental power, intellectual power, physical power, right? Spiritual power as you connect and submit to Him. So you are able to face challenges and meet problems by the grace of God. Number 11, I accept and love myself because God loves me. Right? And accepting yourself is really understanding that you are a person of worth. Accepting yourself don't mean I accept all the bad things that I need to change. If things are unhealthy and sinful, we don't accept them. We work on it. We change it. So when we talk about I accept myself, we're talking about accepting the fact that I'm priceless, that I'm valuable, right? And remember, of course, I'm imperfect. So I accept and love myself because God loves me. God loves you and He wants you to love yourself. Right? I believe I can contribute significantly to the good of others and the world. You have a contribution to make, right? I have the right to my own feelings. My feelings in themselves are neither right nor wrong. I always say what is right or wrong is how we think and how we behave. Right? Boundaries are necessary and appropriate. This is very critical. If we have to set healthy boundaries, we have to understand that boundaries are necessary and appropriate. Number 16, boundaries do not violate love. Boundaries do not violate love. Number 17, setting limits is necessary to keep relationships healthy and growing. Okay? And 19, I am not compelled to justify a boundary with apologetic explanations. I don't need to apologize for boundaries I set. If in my life, based on my belief and in God, understanding God created me, there are certain things that are acceptable to me and not acceptable based on my worldview and my views, and I can simply say that and let people know that. And just as I will respect your boundaries, I expect you to respect my boundaries. Now remember, healthy boundaries help to protect you and help you to fulfill your purpose. And some unknown person, I don't know who said this, right? They said the shortest route to better boundaries is to really like yourself. Better yet, really love yourself. Because once you start understanding God loves me, He wants me to love me. Of course, He wants you to love others and Him, greatest commandments. It really helps you to be able to start setting healthy boundaries. So, how to set and maintain boundaries. So what I'm doing here is now looking at some of the principles involved and giving some examples of boundaries and how to set them. So there are 8 basic principles for healthy boundary setting. 1, we need to know that some people set boundaries, right? Establishing boundaries make you a safe person. People know where they stand with you. Right? They know where they stand with you. Boundaries are the way we take care of ourselves. We have both a right and a duty to protect and defend ourselves. Number 2, generous people set boundaries. If you do not set boundaries, you are going to be giving yourself away in all kinds of ways, right? So that without boundaries, you could end up be spending time, energy, whatever, on a few things that don't even pan out, don't even work well. So you wonder, I'm laboring for all of this, and what are the end results? So with boundaries, you only give what you want to, what you need to, which means you can afford to be generous to more people over a longer period of time. Boundaries allow others to grow because it makes others conscious of their behavior, thus allowing them to change. Sometimes, unless we set a boundary, a person may not realize that they're doing something that is inappropriate, that is wrong, that is sinful, right? Boundaries allow you to get more of what you want and less of what you don't want. Boundaries not only protect you from unwanted behaviors, they also foster behaviors that you want. Effective people set boundaries because doing so keeps you in control of your time and efforts, which of course makes you feel better about yourself, and this leads you to being more effective. Another principle for setting healthy boundaries, you need to stick to your guns, as they say, right? In order for boundary setting to work for you, you must develop a commitment to uphold what is right and true for you. You must act consistently in upholding your boundaries. And this one is very important. It might sound a little strange, but practice makes perfect. And remember, we have to practice the right thing, because we could also say practice makes permanent. So if I'm practicing the wrong thing becomes permanent. The wrong thing becomes perfect, right? Practice makes perfect. If this is not familiar behavior, so setting boundaries is not familiar behavior, it will feel awkward and unnatural at first. And I like this, but anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first. So I want to learn to make a cake because I need to save money. I'm spending too much money on cake and birthday cakes and all of that. So if it's worth doing, let me try. It might come out badly at first. It might flop. It might taste bad. But if it's worth doing badly at first. So let's try. We'll get better at it, right? People may not like it also at first. And that is natural because they're not used to you setting boundaries. What they're used to is them getting their own way. And you may feel uncomfortable. I would say to people, when we're setting boundaries, a lot of times we feel very uncomfortable. And because of that, we could feel like we're doing something wrong. Actually, that feeling means you're doing something right. You are doing something that you've never done before. So it feels uncomfortable, right? And the 8th principle for setting healthy boundaries, keep it up. Keep it up. With practice, you will get more skillful and you will get more graceful. So keep it up. So setting effective boundaries. Very important to back up your boundary setting with action. Your boundary, if you have a boundary, you need to ensure what are the actions to uphold this, but also what are the actions if my boundary is crossed or the boundary is broken. Be direct, firm, and gracious, right? Do not debate, defend, or over-explain. Once we have to over-explain, we're already in a losing battle, right? Have support easily available on the sidelines in the beginning. So sometimes, you need to talk to somebody. Listen, this is what is happening. You know how it has been with this person. And I really want to set this boundary. And you have somebody there kind of keeping you accountable. Yes, Petreece, you could do it. So how did it go when you spoke to the person? Don't worry about that. Of course, they will be upset. You need to stick to it. And you're checking in on me. So Petreece, how is that going? They violated the boundary. Well, no. Okay, good. So keep at it. No, Petreece, don't give in. So have someone on the sidelines, in the beginning, who is supporting you in upholding, having that healthy boundary. And it could be a counselor, your therapist, a very, very close friend, pastors, people who are mature, confidential, and understanding of the situation. Yeah? And stay strong. Don't give in. Don't give in. Right? So how do we set and maintain boundaries? And I'm kind of going into the nitty-gritty, because if we don't understand certain things, it still becomes very difficult. While it is usually best to start setting boundaries early on in a relationship, establishing healthy rules and limitations can help strengthen a relationship at any stage. And sometimes early in the relationship, you don't even know that you have to set certain boundaries because you haven't spent enough time to understand necessarily how a person interacts with you. So you don't even understand that certain restrictions may be needed until you get to know the person more. So, for example, you may take some time to realize that a co-worker is regularly distracting you while on the job. So take some time to realize, wait now, every time I settle down, this person has something to come in here and tell me about while I'm trying to get my work done. Or even you are in a romantic relationship and it took a while for you to realize that this person seems too controlling. So sometimes we don't even know that we have to set restrictions or boundaries. So sometimes it will take time before we're able to see those things. And the following tips can help you establish boundaries if you're experiencing trouble communicating or connecting with a person in your life. So this is tips for setting boundaries. Very important. You see, your self-awareness, very critical. Know what you want in a relationship. Know what you want in a relationship, whether the relationship is romantic or platonic. So friendships, relationships with parents, siblings, co-workers, right? So whether it's romantic or platonic, it is hard to have your needs met if you do not know what they are. Reflecting on your values and beliefs is a good place to start. You need to know yourself. Right? So you can ask yourself questions like, what are my personal core values? What are the things that are important to me? What are the things that I prioritize? How do I make decisions? Because we make decisions based on our core values. What traits do I like to see in other relationships? What behaviors bother me? And you can think about, why does it bother me? Right? What qualities do I admire in others? What material items matter the most to me and why? And material items meaning physical things, right? So sometimes people, books really important to them, so that if they are lending them out, they have certain things they will say, I need you to do this for me to get back, right? And if you don't, I won't be lending you any more books, or you'll have to get back the book for me. So because you understand the things that are important to you and why. How do I like to spend my time? What makes me feel fulfilled? By gaining a more thorough understanding of yourself, you can begin to imagine the types of boundaries you need. If you know that your relationship with God is a priority, you are likely to set boundaries about the activities you will be involved in, right? Even sometimes setting boundaries at certain times, I will not be available because I have to be in a church meeting, right? If you value high productivity, you might set boundaries with co-workers who tend to wander into your workspace and just want to talk and talk and talk and talk while you're trying to get some work done, right? So importance of understanding yourself, understanding what you need, understanding what you want in a relationship. Very important in setting healthy boundaries. Number 2, assessing how you feel with someone. This is important. Don't ignore how people make you feel, right? Sometimes, yes, you may need to look at things in you and there are things I need to change, of course, right? And other people are not always wrong. So, and we are imperfect. But also, if something just continues to happen and seems to be violating your boundaries, something is happening, or making you feel uncomfortable, I should say. There's something that needs to be addressed there. So thinking about how others make you feel can help you identify necessary boundaries. After interacting with other people, reflect on your feelings by asking yourself questions. Did the other person make jokes or comments that made me feel disrespected? Did they do anything that made you feel physically or emotionally uncomfortable or unsafe, such as raising their voice in anger or making flirtatious or disrespectful comments? Did you feel pressured to do things that did not match your values? Did you feel overwhelmed by the person's requests or expectations of you? Did you feel as if they were infringing on your sense of control or treating you like a child? So you're assessing how the person makes you feel in terms of interacting with them, asking yourself those questions. A third one is to identify the symptoms of your boundaries currently being violated or ignored. So think about, I have boundaries and people are violating them and ignoring them. How does it make me feel? What are the symptoms of that? Or identify the symptoms of your boundaries that have been violated or ignored in the past. This is important because it starts to show you, yeah, boy, I really need to have healthy boundaries. So do you feel taken advantage of? Or are you always in some kind of drama when you actually don't like drama? You're always in some drama with people, or you feel like you always have to be explaining yourself, or you just feel burnt out. So when our values are being, or boundaries are being ignored, this is some of what happens, which should help us to say, no, I really have to have healthy boundaries. Number 4, identify the irrational or unhealthy thinking and beliefs that can cause you to allow your boundaries to be ignored or violated. Right? If I set a boundary, I will hurt the person or lose the relationship. That is unhealthy thinking or belief. And we could have unhealthy or irrational thinking or beliefs that will cause us not to stand when our boundaries are being violated or crossed, right? Other people's needs and wants are more important than mine, or I'm just too sensitive, right? Those are some things. If we have them, we will allow our boundaries to be violated. Number 5, identify new and more healthy, rational thinking and beliefs, which will encourage you to change your behavior so that you will build better boundaries between you and others. And of course, I would have shared 18 of them today. And very important, a mindset: boundaries are necessary and appropriate. Boundaries do not violate love, and setting limits is necessary to keep relationships healthy and growing. Number 6, identify new behaviors you need to add to your healthy boundary building behaviors repertoire in order to sustain healthy boundaries between you and others. So, for example, what do I say if my boundaries are crossed? How to have a healthy confrontation if my boundaries are crossed? So you think about those things. So if my sister does so and so, I would have spoken to her about this and she crossed that boundary. What do I need to do or say to deal with that or to confront that? And sometimes even practice it, right? So situational examples of setting healthy boundaries. So let's say there's anger. I do not appreciate you continuing to shout at me. If you do, so if you continue shouting at me, I will leave the room and end the meeting. So you are setting a boundary with respect to how someone is communicating with you in an angry way. In terms of time, I have a policy of not making snap decisions. I actually have that policy, right? I need time to think and reflect on what I want to do. If you need an immediate answer, it will be no. And this is a boundary I've actually set because I found myself in trouble just getting excited and saying yes to things and then realizing, that I don't have the time. I have so many things going on, So this as a boundary. I have a policy of not making snap decisions. I need time to think and reflect on what I want to do and what I'm able to do, right? If you need an immediate answer, the answer will be no. With respect to criticism, it is not okay with me for you to make comments about my weight. Please stop. If you do not, I will not be able to continue this conversation. That's a boundary. With respect to commitments, although this is an important issue to me, I must decline your request for my help at this time. Or I need to honor my family needs, and therefore I am unable to, fulfill this request. So because of your commitments. And then we have, with respect to money, I would not be lending you any more money. I care about you, and you need to start taking responsibility for yourself. So this is a boundary. Now, it is not enough to just set boundaries. It is necessary to be willing to do whatever it takes to enforce them. Enforcing boundaries means following through with your consequences, right? So guidelines for setting consequences. Set the consequences clearly and unemotionally. Say actions, right, that you are willing to take if boundaries are crossed. You may need to allow for gradual change. So people are accustomed relating to you in a particular way, right? As we say, monkey know what tree to climb. Because I didn't have boundaries, people are accustomed related to me in a particular way. So sometimes we have to allow for gradual change. People now getting accustomed to this new Petreece, right? Also, consequences may be negotiable rather than rigid, right? So if the person does so and so, you're willing to do this, you're willing to bend a little bit here because you're seeing, changes, right? Examples of stating clear consequences. Set one, if you break plans with me by not showing up or calling me, I will call you on your behavior and let you know how I feel. So if you do this, this is what I am going to do, right? If you continue with whatever offensive behavior, I will leave the room, or I will leave the house, or I will ask you to leave. So if you continue with whatever that offensive behavior is, this is what I will do. Well, I'll leave the room, or I'll leave the house, or I'll ask you to leave. Number 3, if you continue, and these are examples of how we set consequences. If you continue to ignore my solutions or suggestions, I will assume that you are not interested in receiving help from me, and I will stop working on your case. So you're saying, if you continue in this behavior, this is how I will respond. And we have to remember to follow through on the consequences, or else what? It's just words. It's just talk. I know she wouldn't. And I remember when my daughter was young and having consequences. One thing she knew, so I was not a quarreling mother. We discussed things. This is why this is wrong. This is what will happen if you do this again. And she know, bet your bottom dollar where we get our statement from. Right? If she did it, she would get the consequences. I'm not quarreling. I said this, these are the consequences. And the same thing we have to do in setting boundaries, right? If you are not ready to end a relationship or to end a conversation, do not say that you are until you really are. So don't say, this is what I will do, if you are not really ready to do it. Then you become like a laughing stock. Well, it's just talking, or it's just talk. He always saying that, she always saying that, but if no action to follow up. Okay? And remember, people react based on not so much what we say, but what we do. Actions speak very loudly. If people, so this is in closing, if people are unwilling to respect your boundaries, they are not true friends or people that you want to spend a lot of your time with, right? You don't, right? Setting personal boundaries and limits are very, very important in how you lead your life and the quality of relationships that you have. So I'm really hoping that the information today would, help to empower you on, even if it's one boundary that you set. We don't need a whole lot of boundaries, And sometimes we only set boundaries because people have violated them. So a person has done something. So it's not like we're going around, okay, these are my 10 boundaries if you need to relate to me. No, right? Because a lot of people are respectful of others. A lot of people really listen and they are respectful. But you have people, whether as relatives, loved ones, even friendships, even co-workers, who from time to time, we need to be able to say, this is what I appreciate, this is what I don't. If the person violates, you need to be able to say, if this happens again, or, this is what I would do. So sometimes, even if you just try setting one boundary, could make your life feel so, so much better.
Healthy Relationships with Counsellor and Trainer Petreece Cuffie. The number for her once again, 329-7383. Remember, you can check out her website at coffeeconsultant.com, and also you can check her out on Facebook at Petreece Cuffie and Associates, Equipping People for Life. You can also follow her on Instagram at Petreece Cuffie 1470. So those are her social media platforms. Check her out, and the number once again to send a WhatsApp is 329-7389.